What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Wildcast podcast. I'm Arizona football beat writer Justin Spears, here with senior writer and columnist Michael Lev, talking all things Arizona, Texas Tech football. For the first time ever, Arizona will be playing a Big 12 conference game at Arizona Stadium, and it's a late night one, 8 p.m. kickoff on Fox, and I'm excited for this matchup. But we'll talk all things Arizona, Texas Tech, plus later on in the podcast, we'll have our Big 12 Bonanza. We'll have our predictions for this upcoming week. Lots of interesting games around the conference, and we'll take a deep dive into all those games and also give our score predictions for Arizona versus Texas Tech. Before we get into the weeds, just want to remind you guys to subscribe to Tucson.com. Very cheap subscription. I think it's $1 for 6 months. So sign up. It's definitely worth your while. You get to see a lot of great content that we are producing, including work from my cohort, Michael Lev, who's going to have a really cool edition of Cat Stats this week. Lev, getting right into it, man.
They're always cool.
Well, I mean, they're always cool.
Yeah, not just this.
But you said going into this podcast, you're like, these stats are going to blow your mind. And
yeah,
you actually put out a tweet on Twitter/X, whatever you're calling it these days. And you said that against Utah, Noah Fafita didn't have any passes completed between 10 to 19 yards, which is very interesting. And we talked about it all week long with the change in offensive play calling, going from going from offensive coordinator Dino Babers to Matt Adkins. There were some differences. We saw a lot of pre-snap movement, including the play to Jeremiah Patterson, where he motioned inside and then went outside. That was the corn dog play that the Kansas City Chiefs have run in the past. We saw the tight ends get more involved. But if you really dissect Noah Fafita's passing, maybe not many differences. What did you make of your findings with the latest Cat Stats?
Yeah, well, the 10 to 19 air yards is I can't remember another instance of doing this research where that's been the case, where there's been like an entire kind of area of the field that was completely neglected. Now, it doesn't mean that there weren't plays that were supposed to, result in pass completions with 10 to 19 air yards. It just didn't happen, but it does suggest and it does sort of illustrate a bit of the kind of boom or bust nature of this offense. So in first downs, total first downs in the Big 12, still have.
Oh, they said the ex-wife's name.
Damn. So Arizona has the second fewest first downs per game in the Big 12. And the only school that has fewer first downs per game is Houston, which has far and away the worst offense in the conference and one of the worst offenses in the country. 18.3 first downs per game for Arizona. They had only 17 first downs in the game against Utah. Last year, Arizona averaged 23.2 first downs per game. So 5 fewer first downs per game. Average per play, like Arizona's right up there. They're averaging 7.1 yards per play, right? So that tells you that like big plays, they are happening, but like what you call creating those manageable situations, they're making it hard on themselves, right? The two highlight plays from the game, right? The incredible passes by Noah Fafita. They're awesome, beautiful to watch, clutch, everything you could possibly want from a quarterback and his receivers. That's the good news. The bad news is they were both 3rd and 11 situations.
Yeah.
Right? Their average to gain in third downs in that game was 8.6 yards, which is exactly the same problem that they had in the game when they went 0 for 10 earlier this season against NAU, inexplicably. Yeah. They were 4 for 13 on third downs. And so that was one stat that I thought really stood out to me, and it illustrated this issue that we're talking about. And the other one is they've only been in the red zone 8 times in 4 games, which is also the second fewest in the conference. Houston has been in there 7 times. To give you some contrast on that, Texas Tech who Arizona is playing this week, they've been in the red zone 26 times
Wow.
already. I think they've played 5 games and Arizona's played 4, but still, you get the point. Last year, Arizona was in the red zone 57 times in 13 games, so an average of 4.4 trips per game. They're currently averaging 2 trips per game. Again, like big play, score a touchdown, right? Or don't get there at all.
Yeah.
The field goal attempts that Tyler Lupus has been, forced to try have been a lot of long range.
Yeah.
Because the offense is not like incrementally moving down the field, So I don't know. I don't think that's a sustainable formula, personally, to be so reliant on these big plays. So I would like to see, again, the key word, efficiency. A little bit more efficiency, getting yourself into third and manageable situations or avoiding third down at all by getting 5 yards here, 6 yards here, 7 yards there. That's kind of, to me, what's still missing from the Arizona offense.
And do you think this game coming up against Texas Tech, maybe a team that doesn't really play the physical style of defense that Arizona has been playing up against over the last couple games? Like, Texas Tech is a different team than Utah and also Kansas State. Defense doesn't really play as aggressive. Your boy Marcel Yates is over there as one of the defensive coaches for the Red Raiders. But, I'm looking at Texas Tech, and they seem like a very Texas Tech team, a team that puts up a lot of points and plays absolutely zero defense. They have the highest scoring offense in the league, but defensively kind of soft a little bit. And to me, I don't know about you, Lev, but I really feel like this is like the game where we see the fireworks go off. They're going to have some big plays, but maybe they get inside the red zone and start addressing some of those issues that you're talking about.
Yeah, Texas Tech scores the most points in the Big 12, and they allow the most points.
Very Texas Tech.
They're 15th in third down defense, and they're first in third down offense. They have only 4 sacks on the season. So, I mean, last week's game was 44-41 against Cincinnati. It was kind of like who has the ball last situation. Just because I said all the things that I said about Arizona's offense, that things that they haven't done, doesn't mean that they can't do those things or start to do those things or recognize that they need to do those things. I think this is a great opportunity for the offense to kind of really get on track. I think it's a potential monster game for Tetero McMillan, who's frankly kind of been a little up and down this season. Like, he's super quiet in the NAU game where the entire offense struggled. Strange game. NAU's pretty good. They're ranked right now in the FCS top 25.
Yep.
Good. Nice to see that for the Lumberjacks. And he was awesome against Kansas State. He was unbelievably good against New Mexico. And then last week against Utah, hot start, 6 for 50 in the first quarter, and then didn't catch another pass.
Yeah.
So I think this is a game where he could really go off. And I would like, of course, to see a continuance of the tight end usage that we saw at Utah. We've been over this many times, but we all thought Kean Burnett was a player who was on track for a breakout. It finally happened against Utah. I mean, he was terrific in that game, career highs across the board. And he's a weapon.
Yeah.
Dino Babers again said this week that he wasn't healthy. And I can't remember. Was it the opener that he got flipped onto his back, or was it the NAU game? Remember that play?
Yeah. I think it was the opener, because I remember
it was one of those two. Yeah,
he had a great catch near the sideline, and then after that point,
he tried to hurdle sort of, and Tanner McLaughlin did not do a good job of teaching him how to do that. You're not supposed to land on your back like that. So, hey, if he's healthy, if he's somewhat, he should have Noah Fifita's trust, right? I mean, they played together in high school. The target distribution is another topic we've talked about a lot. Tetero McMillan has 44 targets. No one else has more than 11. So you'd like to see that even out a little bit, and it would help T-Mac if they throw to other people, right? Because teams might decide, you know what, it's not worth our while to double him on every play if other people are killing us, you know? So that might create some more one-on-one opportunities for him.
Well, and that's what worked for Arizona last year when you had two NFL prospects
Of
as pass
course.
catchers in Jacob Cowing and Tanner McLaughlin. Even at running back, like Michael Wiley is probably the most effective running back in the passing game Arizona has ever had. So when you have those three weapons
Yep.
in your offense, it really takes that pressure off of T-Mac. And right now, the supporting cast, I'm not going to sit there and say like they haven't stepped up, but the numbers suggest that T-Mac doesn't really have the help. Maybe now with a change of play calling, maybe now we're going to see more tight ends get involved. I'm going to say I did think that Rayshon Speedy Luke would be really effective in the passing game, but it's looking like he's going to redshirt this season
Can we
and still
talk
be a
about that
part.
a little bit?
Absolutely.
Does it make sense to you from his perspective? Like, I don't know if it does for me, because he was just starting to have more of a role
Yeah.
on the team. He played a decent number of snaps at running back. The running back rotation has shrunk because of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's situation, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it's going to be resolved anytime soon, if at all. They're utilizing him a bit in the passing game. He's looked awesome on punt coverage.
Yeah.
In that game, at a great open field tackle. Like, I feel like he's more involved now than he's ever been. So, like, why is this the time to use your red shirt? I don't know. It's puzzling to me.
He's more involved, but he's still just getting a couple of touches a game. When you look at, some of the other running backs on the team, like going back to the Utah game, looking at the rushing numbers, Quali Conley had 14 carries, Kedrick Reesano had 7, Rayshon Luke had 1. And then he had 2 catches in the passing game. So even though he's more involved in Arizona's offense than he has been, I think maybe he sees that, okay, I'm not as involved as I would like to be, and I should have redshirted my first year at Arizona. Like he had no business playing as many games or getting as many touches as he did in his first season, especially playing behind those guys, which, by the way, did not leave after his freshman year. All of those guys decided to all come back. So, he was playing behind Michael Wiley, Jonah Coleman, and DJ Williams for the last couple of years. And, I think that he was under the impression like, okay, I've waited my turn. Now it's time. And even with a running back room that isn't as deep as it was going into the season, still getting just a few touches a game, maybe he's like, okay, let me redshirt this year, preserve an extra year. And that's maybe he could come back. I don't know. Like, I think that, Rayshon Speedy Luke, he loves Arizona. He loves being a part of the culture here. He loves Alonzo Carter. Like Alonzo Carter and him have a great relationship that goes back to his high school recruitment. If you remember the All-American Bowl where he committed to Arizona, if you look at the hats that were on the table, San Jose State was on there. So he has always had a good connection with that staff. And maybe with the lack of production or maybe lack of touches, maybe he's like, let me just develop this 1 year. And then when Quali Conley and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and those guys leave, then it's just me and Kedrick Reesano. And then I'll finally have that season that I know I could have. I'm just putting myself in his position.
Sure, I get it. And it's a very good point that the previous coaching staff did not handle his situation correctly, right? I mean, he should not have burned his red shirt his freshman year, point blank. How do you know the exact number of games that he ended up playing that season?
I think it might have been obviously more than 4, because then if he played 4, he could have still redshirted. But I think maybe somewhere in the 5 to 6 category as like a special teams guy. Looking at his stats right now, going back to 2022. I don't know. It doesn't say exactly the games played.
7.
So he played in 7 games.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he played in 7 games. He had 15 rushes for 105 yards, 1 catch for 1 yard.
Yeah.
And no kick returns. So
business playing. And especially for how small he was. Like he's,
and he was banged up that year too. Remember, he had the ankle, right? And he had the surgery. Like, at that point, wouldn't it have made more sense to just shut it down?
Yep.
Yeah. So of course, can't undo the past. Hindsight's 2020. All that business. If he feels like this is the best move for him, I can respect it. And we'll see. Hopefully he'll decide to stick around because
Yeah.
it does look like there will be opportunities in the running back room next year with some of these older guys clearing out. But yeah, interesting move. We've seen a lot of kids across the country decide that they're going to take their redshirt year, but in most cases, it's because they want to transfer and they
Yeah.
want to preserve that year for another school. It doesn't seem like that's where things are headed with Speedy.
But going back to this Arizona Texas Tech game, I feel like that win over Utah, I mean, that could essentially be a season saving win for the Wildcats. If Arizona, let's say they got the doors blown off them against Utah, with basketball season starting up, I feel like a lot of people would have jumped off the Brent Brennan bandwagon. I mean, they were already jumping off after that loss to Kansas State, after they lost by 24 points. And for them to go into Utah, a place that, quite frankly, the Utes never lose in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Rice Eccles Stadium is as hostile as it comes. That crowd was energetic. You saw it in that video that they posted
Yep.
on the Arizona football Twitter account, and it was rowdy. Even the Rice Eccles Stadium press box that has the soundproof glass like Arizona Stadium, you could still kind of feel the energy that was going on in that stadium. And for Arizona, all the adversity they had faced in the weeks, the days leading up to that, the hours, right, with the whole plane issue, I think for them to go in and really handle Utah the way they did, I think it says a lot about the fight of this team and really the spirit. And I felt like the spirit was kind of lost at Kansas State, and I'm like, this is not the cast of guys that we saw lead Arizona to the Alamo Bowl. And right when you thought things were going to go left for the Wildcats in that game against Utah, they just found that spark, much like that spark in the Alamo Bowl. Now, two completely different games, but Arizona was cornered in that game against Utah, and the Utes looked like they were going to get all sorts of momentum. And for Arizona to rally like that, again, I just think it says a lot about the guys on the team. And honestly, I think the physicality factor, I think that really bodes well for Arizona moving forward, that they can go up against any style of team or any style of play, any team that is in front of them, and they can handle it. And I think the defensive line was more responsible. They were definitely fundamentally sound in that game. And the offensive line too, Rhino Tapatotai, give him a ton of credit. We were talking about him being a redshirt freshman, a guy who has not really played any college snaps. He's replacing Jordan Morgan, which is a tall task. And for him to not give up any sacks going up against that defensive front, all of those guys together, I think the offensive defensive line, out of all the position groups, I thought they showed the most promise in that game.
All right, I got 3 points for you off of what you just said. One, they updated the player ratings in the EA Sports College 25 game, and Rhino Tapatotai is now a left tackle with a 77, I think, grade, which is, I think, much more reflective of his ability and his role than initially. I think he was like a guard in the 60s or something,
Yeah.
So good for Rhino. He's definitely, I think, like having the full week off from playing to get healthy and some good film for him to watch off the Kansas State game. That was really important for him in that game. Okay, the similarity to the Alamo Bowl is interesting because when you look at the defensive stats, you don't see all those turnovers, but fourth down stops are basically turnovers, right? So they had 2 picks and 4 fourth down stops. What is that up to?
6.
How many takeaways did they have in the Alamo Bowl?
6.
So it was pretty much the same thing. And I can't remember what my third point was. So we'll move on from this. But yes. Oh, no, I know what it was. It was what Chip Viney said yesterday when we talked to him. Chip Viney is the cornerbacks coach. He called this a character win.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really sharp assessment of what this was. Now, of course, the challenge is you got to sustain it. You got to build off of it. You got to get just as hyped for Texas Tech as you were for Utah. Like all those the good vibes and positive momentum goes out the window if you lose this game.
Yeah.
So we thought it was like going to be kind of the most important game of the season, and we figured they'd be 2-2, even though they're 3-1. I think it still holds. I think it's a super important game to keep the momentum going.
If Arizona wins against Texas Tech and then they win the following week against BYU, with Colorado coming to town, and it was announced a sellout.
Yep.
Which is crazy. Lev, you've been covering Arizona football for a little bit. I cannot remember the last time Arizona has sold out a game, like 2 weeks leading up to the game.
Yeah.
Normally they'll announce it like the day before, a couple days out if it's huge, but 2 weeks before the game and it's announced sellout?
Yeah, Colorado's a draw. We know this, right? Like everyone wants to see Shador and Travis Hunter and Coach Prime. So that's obviously a big factor. What I'm going to be interested to see is, are we going to find out on Monday what the TV time is, or is that going to be a 6-day pick? And is it going to be, I don't think it's going to be big noon, because that would be a 9 a.m. kickoff here. So we're still on Pacific time, right? But
could that be a college game day game? Especially if Colorado holds up their end of the bargain?
Maybe. That a lot would have to happen. I mean, a lot would have to happen. They'd have to at least win the next 2 games. But I don't know. Could it be like a 5:00 our time, prime time East Coast kind of kickoff? And no pun intended. Yeah, but that would be a great spotlight situation for Arizona to get one of those. Not be in that like 10:30 Eastern window, but be in that 5:00 Pacific, 8:00 Eastern time when everyone's watching. So I don't know. That's going to be by far like the craziest, I think, home game of the season. Like there's going to be a ton of hype. Like you said, it's already sold out. The Buffaloes have kind of evolved into like the number one attraction / villain in college football, right? Like the team that everyone loves to root against. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Which is crazy because last year they were America's team.
For a while they were.
For 3 weeks.
It's true.
All right. Speaking of Colorado and Big 12 football, let's get into Big 12 Bonanza. Let's go through the slate of picks. Lev, where are we at right now with the standing?
Okay. So somehow this is a sign that we're spending too much time together, Justin. You and I have the exact same record, straight up and against the spread. We are both 26-13, 21-18. We both went 5-2 against the spread last week, even though we had some different picks. Brett Farah, who's unable to join us for the podcast today, he is also 26-13 straight up. He is 19-20 against the spread for the season. So very like the Big 12 itself. Big 12 Bonanza is very compact. It's a tight race. We have 6 games this week. 5 of them are conference games. One of them is not. That game is super interesting, but we will start on Friday night or late Friday afternoon. We've got Houston at TCU. This is an ESPN game at 4:30 p.m. And our point spread for that game, when I sent it to you guys, was Houston getting 16.5, which feels like a lot. Then again, when you look at Houston, they're last in the Big 12 in offense. As mentioned, they've been shut out in each of their last 2 games, which is really kind of sad. They've scored, aside from 33 points against Rice, they've scored 19 points in their other 4 games combined, which is not awesome. They're also last in yards per play, 4.9. TCU, big win for them over Kansas. They snapped a 2-game losing streak. Their quarterback, Josh Hoover, tied for first in the Big 12 in passing touchdowns. They are both -6 in the turnover table, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not good for either.
Not good.
So there's really no like statistical reason why anyone should take Houston with the points in that game, but I'm going to anyway. I just feel like it's going to be I think Willie Fritz is a really good coach, and he'll find a way to just kind of make it an ugly game and not the kind of game that TCU wants to play. So I'm going to take TCU to win. Houston to cover. Brett is the same as me. What do you got?
I'm right there with you. I think TCU and Hoover, that man, he's got what, 3 games with over 300 yards, one with 402 against UCF. TCU slings the ball, but Houston, I mean, even though they are bad, they are the worst team in the Big 12, in my opinion. They did go up to Norman, Oklahoma, and give the
They
Sooners a
did.
run for their money. So any
Their
given
defense
week,
is their
they're
defense
good.
is fine. They just get no help from the offense.
Yeah,
So
exactly. So I'm going to go with TCU to win, but give me the Cougars to cover.
okay. All right, moving on to Saturday. No 9 a.m. games this week, because of all the buys and so forth. So the first Big 12 action is at 1 p.m. We've got West Virginia visiting Oklahoma State. This game is on ESPN2, and the Cowboys are at home, and they are favored by 3 points, which suggests that Vegas views this as an even game. My question to you, Justin, is Oklahoma State really this bad? Like, they have not looked good in weeks. Even the game they won against Arkansas, they didn't really look good. I do find it hard to believe that they would lose 3 in a row. Um, I don't think West Virginia is on the same level as Utah or Kansas State, which is the same, twosome that Arizona just faced and split with, which was a really good outcome. Worrisome aspect for the Cowboys, they're last in the Big 12 in total defense.
Yeah.
Which is really, really surprising. They're also 14th in rushing. With Ollie Gordon coming back, you expected that to be a strength. They're averaging only 3.5 yards per carry and 102.2 yards per game. West Virginia's a little leaky in the rush defense, though. And yeah, so I think all things considered, this is like a desperation game for Oklahoma State to salvage their season. So that's why I'm going to take the Cowboys, no matter what the numbers say. And Brett is with me on this one as well. He's taking Oklahoma State and giving those 3 points.
I'm going with the Cowboys to win and cover. I don't think Oklahoma State loses 3 straight games. They are just way too good of a team to do something like that. And it's in Stillwater, too. And you also have to think, too, ask Arizona what it's like to play Kansas State and Utah in back-to-back games. They played Utah and Kansas State in back-to-back games in Oklahoma State. So they went up against 2 of potentially the best teams in the conference. Utah, Kansas State, they might meet up in the Big 12 championship. So I think Oklahoma State learns from their losses. I think Ollie Gordon gets going. And that defensive stat is really surprising to me because I think Oklahoma State has 2 of some of the best linebackers in the conference. But I think this is a get-right game for the Cowboys, and I like them to win and cover in Stillwater.
Okay. At 4:30, we've got Baylor visiting Iowa State. This is a Fox game. It's great exposure for the Cyclones, who are 4-0. They're ranked 16th in the country. I think I had them 11 or 12 in my poll this week. They are number 1 in the league in scoring defense. They're allowing 7.3 points per game. Incredible. Number 1 in total defense. Number 1 in yards per play allowed. So defensively, I mean, they have got it all. Baylor, man, they're in a tough spot. I mean, they had that heartbreaking loss against Colorado a couple weeks ago. And then they fall behind 28-7 at home against BYU. And you're like, is Dave Aranda even going to survive the weekend? They came back, they rallied, they made it a 1-score game. They ended up losing 34-28. So that's encouraging to me. Like, it says to me that they still have fight. So I'm going to take the 11.5 points here and take Baylor to cover in this game. Like, I don't know, the final score could be 24-14, 24-17, something like that. Brett is going the other way. He's going to take Iowa State to win and cover. What say you?
Listen, I'm not advocating for someone to lose their job, but I've seen this movie before. You're riding a losing streak. Dave Aranda's seat is already very, very, very warm, and they're going on the road and playing against the number 16 ranked team in the country. And then next week they got a bye week, Lev. So before they go on the road and play Texas Tech, if they get the doors blown off them by Iowa State, I could see the Baylor Bears potentially making a midseason move and letting go of Dave Aranda. I just see the bye week as a possibility of Baylor looking the other way or looking to move on from Dave Aranda. I think this could be a critical game, but I think Iowa State, I think they'll win and cover, and really making that seat for Dave Aranda very high.
Yeah, you're right. If they have a bye the following week, he could get tarmacked.
Yeah.
To use that term, which sucks because he's a really interesting guy. He's really smart. And I don't know, it's hard. Sometimes things just don't click for you. So really important game for Baylor, and the odds are stacked against them for sure. All right, so the non-conference game this week is UCF at Florida. This game is on SEC Network at 4:45 p.m. This is one of those games, Justin, where I do not understand the line at all. Like UCF is favored in this game at Gainesville by 2.5. This is like not that long ago. This was an AAC team. Okay, so you're telling me that a team that very recently was in the group of 5 is favored at an SEC team, Florida, which I know they've got a lot of problems, and their coach is on the hot seat and conceivably could get fired as well. But they kind of rebounded a little bit. They blew out Mississippi State in their last game. Do you think UCF, like 1 through 85, has more talent than Florida? I don't. So I'm taking Florida in this game. I'll happily take those points, and Brett is doing the same. He's also taking the Gators.
I'm going with UCF to win and cover. I think the Knights have a bounce back game after really getting handled by Colorado. And again, we're talking about coaches on the hot seat. If UCF comes in and really dominates Florida, could this be the week that the Gators move on from Billy Napier? I mean, his seat is already very warm. I think losing to an opponent like a UCF and getting handled, that could really push Billy Napier out the door. I'm going with the Knights to win and cover.
Okay, going the other way. I like it. I like it when we don't have consensus. It makes it way more fun to me. There have definitely been times in the past where I've just gone against you guys just for the hell of it. Speaking of teams that are struggling, man, Kansas.
Oh man,
I think easily the biggest disappointment in the Big 12.
Absolutely.
They're coming to the desert to face Arizona State, which had a bye last week. This game is on ESPN2. It is a 5:00 kickoff, so it's going to be hot. It has been, for those of you who don't live here, who are listening to or watching this episode, it has been super hot in Arizona, over 100 degrees, and that's expected to continue through the weekend. And it's always 5-6 degrees hotter in the Phoenix area than it is down here in Tucson. So let's just start off with, that's going to be a tough challenge for Kansas. They have not played well. They've lost 4 games in a row. 2 of those games were at home. I don't know. Is this the place for Kansas to get right? I don't know. It doesn't feel like that spot. Now, Vegas might see things differently because it's only a 2.5-point spread for ASU. This feels like that spread feels a lot like that Baylor Colorado game that you should have won, Justin. That Baylor should have won. And we're all like, why is the point spread so close? Because Vegas knows something. So Vegas obviously thinks these teams are pretty equal. I'm going with Arizona State, though. They have the number 1 rushing defense, or number 2 rushing defense in the Big 12, allowing 82.3 points per game. That's Kansas's bread and butter. If they can stuff the run against Kansas, force them to pass the ball, that's an uncomfortable spot for them. So I think it's going to be 5 losses in a row for the Jayhawks as they head into a bye and try to regroup.
See, the comedian in me wants me to pick Kansas because Sam Levitt's, the furniture store, just announced that they are going out of business after 71 years. And Sam Levitt, Levitt, is it Levitt or
It's Levitt,
Levitt?
yeah.
Sam
Levitt,
Levitt, the quarterback for ASU. I'm like, oh, maybe Kansas can come in here and put them out of business the way Sam Levitt did, right? But I'm also picking with my brain here. And the only win for Kansas this year is a 45-point win against Lindenwood. Do you even know where Lindenwood is, Michael Lev?
Is it like near Missouri? Is it in Missouri near St. Louis? I don't know.
No idea. That's why I'm asking you. So the Kansas Jayhawks have not looked good. They have a bunch of turnovers this season. And ASU, I'm going with them to win on the road or win at home in Tempe. And I think ASU will win convincingly.
St. Charles, Missouri. That's where Lindenwood University
Missouri.
is. Yeah, Brett is also taking ASU. We're probably going to be wrong. I've taken Kansas like every single week.
Yeah.
It's like loss. Now is the week where I go against them, so they're probably going to win.
Costanza, baby.
Last game, I think might be the last kickoff in the country on Saturday. Texas Tech at Arizona, 8 o'clock. Oof, it's going to be a late night, Justin. It's going to be a really late night, especially with
Yep.
as much passing as there's probably going to be in this game. I think for our sanity and our health, we need Arizona to get the lead and run the ball, get that clock going. This game is on Big Fox, which is always cool. And when I in my head was kind of trying to guess the spread, I was right in the range. I thought 6.5 is indeed 6 points that Arizona is favored by. We've talked about like what kind of a team Texas Tech is, and it's a very different team than Utah and Kansas State. That's for sure. They do have a workhorse running back in Taj Brooks, who leads the league in rushing attempts despite missing a game. So he's got 103 rushing attempts in 4 games, which you just don't see that on any level of football anymore. Someone averaging over 25 carries a game. They have a really good quarterback in Baron Morton, who's got 14 touchdown passes and 2 interceptions. We know that they have a really good offense. They have a susceptible defense. No question about it. I think Arizona is going to carry its momentum from last week, and they're going to win this game. I think it's going to be tight for most of it, but I think the Wildcats eventually will wear them down. I'm going to say final score 41-30.
I'm going with 38-27 for the Arizona Wildcats. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think that gentleman who's sitting on top of the Lowell Stevens football facility who sets off all the fireworks, he's going to have a very productive night. They're going to get their money's worth out of that guy on Saturday night. I think Arizona is going to put up a bunch of points. I agree with you, Lev, earlier in the podcast. I think that T-Mac is going to have a T-Mac game. It won't be 304 yards. It won't be maybe 266 like you saw in the Territorial Cup, but I think, a 150 to 200 yard game for T-Mac, I think he's due for one. And then I think, you're going to see the tight ends get more involved. I think the offense is going to be humming against that Texas Tech defense. And, for the U of A defense, hey, you did good against Utah, but can you do it again? And can you stop the run against Taj Brooks? You have finally figured out a way to stop running quarterbacks or athletic quarterbacks. You did it against Isaac Wilson. You're able to kind of corral him and really make him one-dimensional. You don't got to worry about that with Morton. He is a pocket passer. He is not getting outside of the pocket to run. So you don't have that factor, but Taj Brooks is still a really good running back. Joshua Kelly, their wide receiver, is top 5 in the league in receiving yards. So Texas Tech has some skill players on the offensive side of the ball that I think will make some big plays and will give Arizona's defense some fits. But I think Arizona, with the momentum that they have created against Utah, I think they're going to come home and get it done against Texas Tech.
Yeah, Brett is taking Arizona to win, but Texas Tech to cover. So he's envisioning a field goal game. You mentioned Joshua Kelly. He's on his 3rd school. He was at Washington State last year, and he started his career at Fresno State. You asked Chip Viney about his connection to another Fresno guy, Robert Golden, former Wildcat. Chip Viney said they're very close.
Yep.
Chip said that he almost came to Arizona. Robert Golden's coming back to Tucson this week. He's just officially announced as the honorary captain for this game, which is very cool. Robert's got an interesting story. I think you've written about him before. A really good guy. He's very, done some really good work in the education space back in his hometown. So, yeah, he's coming in. They've got a picture of him in like the all blues, Justin, like blue from head to toe. I'm not sure how I feel about that look. Might bring back some like memories and nostalgia for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the white helmet and the white pants over this all blue look. But
yeah, Robert Golden, man, he's awesome. One of my favorite Wildcats of all time. I was such a great defensive back under Mike Stoops, and he opened up a charter school in his hometown of Fresno called Golden Charter Academy, which is the first K through 8 school, or it's either K through 8 or K through 12, first K through whatever school that in the country where the curriculum is all based around the zoo, the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. Obviously, a bunch of animals there, and the kids have classes at the zoo. I would have loved to go to zoo school when I was a kid, but I think, Robert Golden opening up this charter academy, giving back to his community, it says a lot about his character and the kind of guy that he is, and it's going to be cool to see him back here in Tucson, Arizona. A lot of great games with Robert Golden as an Arizona Wildcat. Was a part of those great later year Mike Stoops teams that went to the Holiday Bowl and also Alamo Bowl. He was also, I think his last year was the year that Stoops got fired in 2011. But Robert Golden, one of the more underrated Wildcats of all time. And it's cool to see him back in Tucson. All right, so we're all going with Arizona, but Brett has the Red Raiders covering.
It wouldn't shock me if it was a field goal game, And I think, unfortunately, if that happened, that a lot of people would kind of be getting on Brent's case again. But you have to bear in mind, a lot of these Big 12 games are going to be one-score games.
Yeah,
that's just how the league is. That I don't know if anyone's going to dominate week in and week out in this league. And hey, I know it causes a lot of anxiety for fans, but it's also more fun that way if the games are close and interesting.
Arizona versus Texas Tech, 8 p.m. kickoff on Fox. It's going to be a late one at Arizona Stadium. For all the coverage with the Arizona Wildcats this football season and on Saturday night, make sure you go to Tucson.com and also download the Wildcaster app. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.